In a metropolis where racial tensions between the police and the black community are exacerbated, Agent Gregoire Lefebvre, a white police officer in his 40s, patrols an upscale neighborhood at the end of the afternoon. Arrogant, convinced of his impunity, he believes himself to be above the rules, a man with unlimited power in a city that seems to run at his own pace. The neighborhood, with its immaculate facades and luxury stores, exudes opulence and order. But for Lefebvre, it is more than a setting. It is his hunting ground, where he can exercise his authority without fear of consequences. As he drives slowly down a wide avenue lined with luxury boutiques, his gaze falls on a black sedan stopped at a red light. The car stands out in the lineup of lower-class vehicles. At the wheel, a black woman, elegantly dressed, with serene features and a posture that exudes quiet confidence. Beside her, an open file on the passenger seat reveals official documents. Something in her appearance, in her ease, seems out of place. This bothers Lefebvre, a dull unease rising within him. In his mind, only one thought: she can't be from here. Lefebvre, in his world of certainties, cannot imagine that this woman could belong to this upscale neighborhood. It's a dissonance that he can't stand, a reality that goes against his prejudices and the vision he has of the world. When the light turns green, he hesitates for a moment, then, imbued with his power, he activates his flashing light and orders the vehicle to stop on the side of the road. He feels entitled to do so, as if he had the right to suspend the order of the city to play with this reality that he finds uncomfortable. The woman does not protest when he approaches the window. She lowers the window and gives him a calm look, a look that destabilizes him. There is nothing submissive about this calm. It is a look that seems to scrutinize its own authority, to question it, without a word spoken. "Hello, officer. A problem?" His voice is calm, almost too calm, like a slowly spreading mist. Lefebvre gives a contemptuous smile, a smile that he thinks is reassuring, but which above all hides his annoyance. "Routine check, ma'am. Vehicle license and papers." She hands over her documents without a word, and her gesture, simple but elegant, seems a silent challenge. Lefebvre examines them quickly, glancing furtively at the paper. His documents are perfectly in order. He expected an error, a forgery, a flaw to exploit. But no. Irritation rises in him like poison. This woman leaves no room for her power. Everything is consistent, and his mind is forced to accept the truth of what he sees, but his ego refuses to consent.
"Do you live in this neighborhood?"
he asks, in a dry tone, as if the question alone could serve to embarrass him. "Yes," she replies without blinking. His response is short, direct, without the slightest hesitation.
"Do you own the vehicle?"
She tilts her head slightly, as if this question deserves a more thoughtful answer. "As you can see on the papers." His tone is impassive, almost detached, but the steel of his gaze pierces Lefebvre's mask, like a sharp blade. Lefebvre no longer finds any argument. The fact that she maintains this calm, fearless posture annoys him deeply. Usually people in this position look down, justify themselves, look for a way out. But she remains frozen, implacable. Every gesture of this woman seems to challenge her conception of the world. He grits his teeth, and an impulse of violence runs through him. An impulse he cannot repress. "Get out of the vehicle," he orders abruptly. His voice becomes harder, sharper, like a veiled threat. She frowns, marked by the implicit violence of this request.
"For what reason?"
she asks, her gaze never leaving his. Each syllable is a stone thrown at his authority. "For in-depth inspection. Get out immediately." He insists, without explanation, but with a determination that no longer hides his annoyance. She sighs deeply, but complies. She opens the door calmly, closing the door behind her with a precise, measured gesture. She stands straight, and her hands are visible, without hasty movement.
"She's not scared."
She doesn't tremble. "Agent, I ask you again, why this control?" His voice is firm, but full of restraint. She doesn't raise her voice, but she leaves no doubt about her authority in front of him. Lefebvre feels rage invade him, a dull anger that twists his stomach. He takes a step forward, imposing his presence, but it's really a desperate attempt to compensate for his discomfort. He knows that this woman is defying him, and that pisses him off. I'm the one asking the questions here, ma'am. And I advise you to cooperate. His gaze becomes icy, his black eyes fix on her like projectiles, seeking to break her. I am cooperating, she said calmly, but you are exceeding your authority. The calm in his voice resonates like a death knell, striking against Lefebvre's arrogance. This calm, this certainty, triggers an explosive rage in him. Without thinking, he raises his hand and delivers a resounding slap, a sharp sound that echoes in the air. An icy silence settles in, heavy, as if the whole world was freezing. The woman doesn't move. No trembling, no reaction. His gaze has hardened, like an iron blade, and a dangerous glint shines in his eyes, a glint that goes far beyond simple anger. It is a glimmer of challenge, but also of knowledge.
Of understanding.
She takes a deep breath, then, in a slow, measured movement, she pulls a badge from her pocket. A badge that she displays before her eyes, almost like a silent promise. Lefebvre feels his stomach knot. He instantly recognizes the badge. The blood leaves his face. His legs wobble, and an icy terror invades him, like a brutal fall into the void.
My name is Captain Sara Diakité, Head of Internal Affairs.
The words float in the air, heavy with meaning, and Lefebvre stands there petrified, his mind besieged by the reality of the moment. The truth hits him with the force of a thunderclap, and the arrogance he wore so proudly disintegrates in a split second. The scene that follows seems unreal, like a painting frozen in time. Lefebvre remains frozen, his hand still raised in a gesture that he can no longer lower, his heart beating wildly in his chest. He feels sweat beading on his forehead, but he is unable to react, paralyzed by the brutality of what has just happened. Around him, the world seems to have stopped spinning. Passers-by have stopped, some are watching, others are already filming with their phones, capturing every moment of his public humiliation.
He hears murmurs, whispers.
Looks of judgment, of anger. The flood of reality invades him like a tsunami. The power he thought he held transforms into a fragility he has never felt before. You're lying, he stammers, his voice trembling, almost inaudible in the face of the certainty of the woman who stands before him, frozen in her icy calm. Sara Diakité, Captain of Internal Affairs, does not respond. His gaze is cold, implacable, like that of a predator observing prey captured too late. She doesn't waste time with unnecessary words. With a precise gesture, she takes her cell phone out of her pocket, and with a confident hand, dials a number. Her face, far from being affected by the event, instead expresses the determination of a woman who knows exactly what she is doing.
This is Captain Diakité.
I was physically attacked by an officer on duty. Send a team immediately, she said in a calm but authoritative voice. She hangs up without waiting for a response, then waits. Lefebvre, for his part, is frozen in increasing confusion, unable to grasp the reality of what is happening. He looks around him, but the faces of the passers-by, those who barely look, distant and indifferent, only add to the feeling of dizziness that invades him. Pressure builds in his temples, a dull panic he can't control. A few minutes pass, but in Lefebvre, they seem endless. Sirens pierce the air, and several police cars come barreling down the street, almost as if the ground itself has opened beneath their feet. The police officers who descend are professional, methodical, but the atmosphere is tense. He recognizes among them the commissioner in charge of disciplinary affairs. When he sees Sara Diakité, his face freezes. He turned pale, a paleness that spoke volumes about his worry, perhaps the fear of being involved in something much bigger than himself. Captain, what happened? He asks, but his voice betrays a certain nervousness, as if he already knows he doesn't want to hear the answer. Sara Diakité does not answer him immediately. She slowly turns towards Lefebvre, and this simple movement, almost calculatedly slow, increases the pressure another notch. His eyes do not leave Lefebvre, and in this gaze, he feels the weight of justice, of authority, of truth. The truth that he tried to erase with his gesture. The truth he can no longer ignore. This man attacked me without justification. He must be taken into custody immediately, she says, her voice sharp and final. The commissioner hesitates, visibly destabilized. He looks at Lefebvre, then returns to Sarah Diakite, looking for a sign, a clue of what could justify doubt. But Sarah doesn't give him any room. She is inflexible. You are sure that, begins the commissioner, but she interrupts him, and her tone becomes sharper. Are you questioning my word? She cuts coldly, and her question, full of defiance, cracks in the air like a whip.
A heavy silence falls over the group.
The commissioner, a man accustomed to power games, understands that now is not the time to doubt. He makes an imperceptible, but sufficiently significant, gesture towards two police officers. They advance without a word, and in a synchronized movement, they surround Lefebvre, pinning him against the hood of his car. Lefebvre tries to step back, a desperate impulse to escape that pushes him to spread his hands and take a few steps back.
No.
Wait. He protests, but his words are empty, a last attempt to escape the inevitable. The handcuffs snap on his wrists, permanently shattering any hope of redemption.
The noise echoes in there, like the sound of a world collapsing.
Lefebvre remains there, motionless, his eyes wide with terror. The weight of his own fall crushes his chest. It's over. His career, his privileges, everything he thought he had acquired, all of this is dissolving in an ocean of shame and powerlessness. A few days later, Lefebvre found himself in a cold office at the police department. The atmosphere is icy, the walls seem to be closing in on him. He sits, his hands still slightly trembling, facing Sarah Diakite, a woman whose significance he was unable to understand before this moment. His lawyers have warned him. He risks dismissal. The whisper of this possibility rings his ears, but that is not what torments him. What eats away at him is the vision of Sarah Diakite, implacable, in front of him, the only source of his desolation. She watches him silently, her eyes staring into his, as if assessing each beat of his heart. Then she speaks, and her voice is a sharp blade, a judgment without appeal. You thought I was a simple black woman who you could humiliate without consequences? She asks, her voice deadly calm. Lefebvre looks away, unable to sustain this intensity. He feels sweat beading on his forehead, but he doesn't respond. The words are stuck in his throat, and shame chokes him. You're not my first case, she continues without losing her calm. You have a long history of abuse of power. Complaints dismissed due to lack of evidence. But this time, there are witnesses.
Videos.
She emphasizes each word, like an accusation engraved in the stone of reality. She leans forward slightly, a measured but effective gesture, like a reminder of her dominance. She doesn't need to scream. His words are enough. You slapped the wrong person, Agent Lefebvre, she said finally, a heavy silence settling between them. The verdict is final. Lefebvre knows, deep inside, that his career is over. There is no more room for excuses. Everything is already too far away, too visible. A heavy silence settles in the room, and Lefebvre remains there, prostrate in his shame. Sarah Diakite gets up without a word, puts away her files with clinical precision. She heads towards the door, but before leaving, she turns to him one last time. The look she gives him is almost a farewell, a conclusion to a chapter of her life. Justice is slow, but it always comes, she said in a calm but penetrating voice, before disappearing into the corridor, leaving him alone with his fate.